When's a murder mystery start?
Okay, Renee. As the pre-definite podcasters of movies,
Nice word choice.
that's what I'm going for, this is our infraction point to
Mhm.
talk about Glass Onion, and we have to talk about Knives Out.
Yes.
I mean, let's just get the fluff out of the way. Glass Onion is fucking great.
It's so good. I love it. It's amazing.
So if all you came for is to hear if we like it or not, we just saved you like 40 minutes. So
yeah, that's all we had to say. No, I think Knives Out and Glass Onion are just so different from each other. So I love both of them in their own unique ways. But I love that Knives Out, the the whole family dynamic is pretty incredible in that movie, and it's obviously very different from all the like influencers or like famous people that are like all in Glass Onion. So but I do love both group dynamics. I think that they nail that, which is really important when you have a murder mystery because you got to like be interested or like care about any of the characters, even if they're all kind of like satirical. You know?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you say they're so different. I agree that they're different, but I think these are two movies that are just different sides of the same coin. Like there are so many parallels between these
Totally.
movies that we will definitely get into. But yeah, like there are a lot of differences.
It's just I think it's just more that there's more like everybody, all the personalities in Glass Onion are pretty much over the top personalities, like
Yeah.
really extreme versus like in Knives Out. There's at least like one or two people, like Jamie Lee Curtis, for example, that's like, okay, she's probably not insane, right? Or
Yeah.
like there's some more normal people that
Yep.
like are in the family versus like this one, like everybody's extra, which I love both of them. So
extra.
that was all really the only difference. But yes, I agree with you. They're just different flavors of Benoit Blanc, who I'm obsessed with. He's my favorite detective.
Well, we do have to acknowledge the shared similarity between the two movies that both movies have super alt-right guys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one's a guy, one's a boy.
Yeah.
What's the great line from Knives Out?
What were the overheard words by the Nazi child masturbating in the bathroom?
So good. There's also just the great, like that whole scene when they're talking about that and like what he heard in there, and they're just talking about like his cousin or whatever. She's like alt-right troll, and he's like liberal snowflake, and Michael Shannon's just like, I don't know what any of that means. He's also one of my favorites in this movie. Like, I think we should talk about maybe who is our favorite overall, but I have to say that Michael Shannon really, I love him in everything, but this is one of my favorites.
So you're talking about Knives Out.
Knives Out, yeah.
Okay. So Michael Shannon is one of your favorites?
One of my favorites, but probably number one, like best person that I think is like my favorite in the movie, outside of obviously Benoit Blanc, is fucking Chris Evans.
Okay, yes. So this is the movie that reminded me how much I love Chris Evans outside of Captain America.
Like evil Chris Evans. I love it when he's just playing an asshole.
Like this is 2016, so like this is around when like Winter Soldier, like mid Captain America franchise stuff. So
Knives
like
Out came out in 2019.
Oh yeah, you're right. So this was after
Yeah. Endgame.
Yeah,
right?
after Endgame. Sorry, I'm confusing this with another murder mystery movie that's not as good. But yeah, this was Chris Evans' like reminder to the world that I'm more than Captain America.
Right after I feel like he left Captain America, it was like this movie, and you're like, oh shit, I'm excited to see what he does.
I feel like Chris Evans would have done this movie for free at this point. Like,
yeah,
just like
this is great.
And it was just like Chris Evans as an asshole is just the greatest gift ever.
I know, and he's like, eat shit, eat shit, eat shit, eat shit, eat shit, and die. And then I just love, again, Michael Shannon special shout out, because you hear him in the background. He's like, I will not eat one iota of shit. He's so good in this movie. Oh man. And then also, like, I mean, obviously the whole cast is incredible. Don Johnson, though, also just total dumbass, and I love him as he's Jamie Lee Curtis's husband and Chris Evans' dad. Yeah, he's really funny at just playing the kind of idiot, like who talks shit about the family to the detectives unwillingly and
Yeah.
who's obviously lying about shit. Everyone's just really great. But I think overall, the dynamic between Anna de Armas and Daniel Craig, they're just incredible together in that movie. I really love their back and forth and like their chemistry, I think is really good.
Yeah, they are. And before we totally go off trail of Chris Evans, I just wanted to shout out a couple other great lines of his. When he meets Benoit Blanc for the first time, he's like, "What are you, KFC meets CSI?"
Yeah.
And then when he talks to the daughter, and he's like, "How's that SJW degree going?" Like the delivery of those is just so flawless. I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
you've been wanting to be this guy for so long. You've been Captain America for too long." And he's so good, and he's so good in the movie of, spoilers, making you think that he's actually like the good one.
Yeah.
Like
Because he is Captain America, so you still kind of believe it.
he's the black sheep of the family, and anyone who feels kind of like the black sheep, like you're kind of drawn to him. And he's so good, especially when the family starts like getting corrupted and like bullying and stuff. He's the one who's not, but it's because he's the bad guy.
I know. And it is kind of obvious, like from the beginning, you're like, oh yeah, it should be obvious that it's him. But it's funny because like I didn't think about it the entire time because what's great about Knives Out and Glass Onion, and I didn't know that he could do it again. And the fact that he did is incredible. But like Rian Johnson literally made a fucking murder mystery where it's like I was so confused because Knives Out, like what, 20 minutes in, it's like you feel like you have learned everything.
Yeah.
Like you see Anna de Armas's character, so you know that she thinks that like she accidentally drugged him, and then this whole charade with changing and sneaking out and all this shit. And so then later to be like, "Oh my god, it's so much more complex than that." It's just incredible. It's
Oh
so good.
yeah.
It's such a great twist because I think I just didn't suspect him because I assumed that we had seen everything. I don't know why, because I was a dumbass, but it's just like he makes you feel comfortable with like, and then it is like, "Oh yeah, obviously it should be this guy. Of course. I should have known all along. All the clues point to him." But he really does. He has a good job of throwing you off of like the person who should be the most obvious suspect. But I guess I'm just always going back to Dwight from The Office. And I'm like, who do I most medium suspect? That's who it is. It's never the most or the least, right? So I'm always looking for that. And then Ryan Johnson still fucking gets me because he pays homage to like classic murder mystery stuff, but then does it in a whole new way.
Yeah, so this actually leads really well. So I was looking at Knives Out and when it was made and the other movies that were around it. And like there's a lot of who done it mysteries out there, but like there's not a there's the who done it kind of like Gone Girl. Like that's a
Like thriller mystery
thriller kind of thing. There's a very like specific kind of niche that this falls in of
detective.
like Clue kind of
Yes, love
murder
Clue.
mystery movie.
But more recently, like Murder on the Orient Express, the Agatha Christie stories.
That's the parallel. And so Murder on the Orient Express came out in 2017.
Mhm.
That's why I was confusing Chris Evans with that. And then Knives Out came out in 2019. And their like box office IMDb is almost exactly the same. For me at least, the difference is that I was excited to see Glass Onion. When I heard Death on the Nile was coming, I was like, yeah, that'll be fun to watch someday, years from now, that I will be, bored and watching. Murder on the Orient Express sucked. I'm sorry, I have to say it.
I can't believe you think that. I don't think it's bad, especially if you've seen now I'm assuming you've seen Death on the Nile. That one's
No,
terrible.
no, I
Oh
told you.
god,
I
you should
told you
watch it though.
I told you years from now. Okay, I'm not going to watch it the same
It's
year.
just fascinating because it also like in addition to it not being a good sequel, it also had the nightmare of like being pushed back a few times because of COVID slash number one reason was because fucking Army Hammer turned out to be a cannibal.
Army Hammer was the most interesting thing about that movie.
Oh, no, I didn't really care for I mean, I was like, "Eh, whatever." I didn't care about him that much beforehand, but
It's kind of
yeah.
like it's kind of like a "Don't Worry, Darling"
Yes.
situation. The Army Hammer drama. I'm like, oh, maybe I need to see this movie, and them cutting him out of the previews and all this stuff, but
Yeah.
didn't work. Still haven't seen it.
It's all on a green screen, and it's, like, glaringly obvious, and it's just not as much fun. I still love Kenneth Branagh, and I love his Hercule Poirot? I can never fucking say it, I don't have an accent, but
I don't even have to mock you. You're just mocking yourself. Hooray.
Hercule Poirot. Can't do it. I can't do it. Poirot, whatever it is. But anyways, I think he's the best part of those movies for sure. The cast is good, but then that's only the first one. I think the cast is all really good in that movie. I don't think the cast in the second movie is good at all. Like I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, but I don't think she's a very good actor. I
Yeah,
don't think she's a very good actress.
I like her. I love her as Wonder Woman.
Yeah, she's perfect.
I really liked her in Fast and the Furious.
I mean, again, yeah, but demanding anything else out of her seems like a lot.
Her being the face of this movie did not overcome how much I hated the first one. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to see this.
It is pretty funny in parts to like, wow, and like this is just so bad. And Army Hammer is like, but that's the thing is like it came out and I was just like, well, obviously this guy's the bad guy, right? Like I'm not gonna trust this fuck. And then I was right, so don't need to watch it.
Wait, the cannibal is the bad guy?
Yeah, of course he is. Of course he is.
I can't believe they didn't reshoot it.
Believe me. I mean, I knew the original story that both of these were based on, so like I knew, but like I guess I hadn't really like thought about Death on the Nile's plot in a long time. I forgot it. So I watched it and I was like, yeah, no shit. Of course he was a liar. Look at him. He's a fucking cannibal, dude. Can't trust those fucks.
I like Kenneth Branagh. I haven't seen a ton of his stuff, but like I loved the first Thor. I thought
I
he
think
was
he's a great actor and director.
I think he's a great director. I mean, I don't know about actor. I think Daniel Craig is ruining that kind of detective character in my
100%.
head.
Well, but also because Benoit Blanc is like the best because he's also like not just like there's black and white and right and wrong. And also he's not a dick to anybody or doesn't see himself as like this perfect person, like who's higher than everybody else, which I feel like his character in Murder on the Orient Express kind of does.
Great mustache.
He has a wonderful mustache, I will say. And the production design on the first one was really great. I love the whole train setting. I think it's a good twist too.
Yeah.
The first one's really not that bad. The second one, not good. I'll give you that. But the Knives Out just makes those pale in comparison. And then especially Glass Onion. But it's just funny that both of those take place in a tropical setting. With Death on the Nile, obviously being, and I was just like, oh shit, like, is it like inspired by it? But I was like, oh no, it's just like 10 times better.
So as I was watching Glass Onion, and like I mean, in the first half, I'm like, this is great, and then the second half, I'm like, this is really great.
It's like two different movies almost.
Which is kind of like Knives Out. Rian Johnson has a real thing for doing a total plot twist at halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
he's all about like I'm in this genre that people I've probably gotten used to, and there's certain tropes and shit.
Yeah.
And he'll like play with those. But then he's like, I'm gonna throw all of them out the window though at a certain point, and then everything's gonna be different. And you're just like, what? Like he did that with the fucking Last Jedi. I mean, literally, that's why all the guys are mad. It's like he was like, oh, all those things that he loved, like they literally burned all the Jedi text in that movie because he's like, fuck it, we're burnt. He's like the Joker. He like let's burn everything down and we start something fresh and new. And I love it. I think he brings a much needed original, like, I mean, I'm just excited watching his movies because I have no idea what's going to happen.
100%. And so, like, Rian Johnson, he's a young director.
How old is he?
I don't know, but like, he doesn't have a giant filmography.
Well, you call us old, so I'm just wondering.
Well, he's old compared to Quentin Tarantino. I mean, he's got 9 movies, so I guess that's not a good comparison. But
he's old compared to him?
Yeah, Tarantino's very old. But anyways, Rian Johnson is one of those directors. There's a couple of them that I have in my head that they don't have any misses. And I'm including Last Jedi. Last Jedi is
I agree.
It's not an incredible movie, but by Star Wars standards, it's by far the most interesting.
Oh, it's definitely the best Star Wars movie that we've had since the original movies.
I think Rogue One is probably the best
No,
still.
Last Jedi's 10 times better.
Anyways,
Eh.
it's the most interesting, which is saying a lot.
Okay,
Because
calm down. You need to rewatch Star Wars. Clearly, you don't like them.
well, I'm saying I love the original three. The prequels are fine.
I fucking love the prequels. Get out of here.
Okay, Jesus, to not deviate this into a totally Star
Just-
Wars podcast.
That's what I'm fucking here for. Okay, I just got to defend all those Star Wars kids out there. Is gonna come for you. I'm just saying they're not that bad.
So, but
Anyways,
Rian Johnson in his movie resume does not have a miss. Like he did these two movies. He also did Looper, which I told you is a banger.
I still need to watch that, but I believe you.
It's a banger. It's so good. He's done two other movies that I have not seen, but I would watch them just because it's him.
What
It's
movies?
the Brothers Bloom and Brick. These are like early 2000s. 2005, 2008. So like Looper was his first like mainstream movie from what it looks like. But he doesn't have any misses. And that made me think of other directors. There's only two that come to mind for me. So I want to ask you if there's any others. Like young directors, not age, young in their directorial.
Okay.
Ryan Coogler, like Black Panther, Fruitvale Station.
I haven't seen any of those.
Creed.
I haven't seen any of that.
Oh,
I've seen Black Panther, I guess, but I just didn't love that movie.
Black Panther is a good movie. But it's the weakest of his movies.
It's like, yeah.
Fruitvale Station is the first movie he did with Michael B. Jordan. Then he did Creed. Creed is the best spin-off requel movie franchise ever. Especially, this is coming from a guy who grew up on Rocky. Like Creed is awesome. It's so good. Ryan Coogler is the man. And then the other one is Matt Reeves.
Yeah, I'll give you Matt Reeves.
The Batman, I've been watching through the Planet of the Apes. They bang.
I know. I just watched those this past year because I love the Batman so much as well, and they are great. And I love Cloverfield too.
Yeah, Cloverfield is great. It's like those three guys are like in my head of like these young guys. I'm just like I cannot wait for any movie that they make.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm gonna throw Ari Aster at you because obviously
he is pretty. Yeah, actually, yeah, he's pretty. Yep, he's only technically done 2 feature-length movies.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Only 2.
Yeah,
like feature length, full like, and I would also say Robert Eggers as well. 2 bangers, back to back. Same. I feel like those movies also came out in the same years.
Eggers is up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I don't know if you've seen it. Also, he's done 3 now, and I think The Northman was just fucking incredible.
The Northman is no, I've only seen The Lighthouse, which I loved.
Yeah.
So I need to see the other ones.
You need to see The Witch, and you need to see The Northman. He has in every movie so far. But yeah, him like Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, those 2 guys, and then also Jordan Peele, I would say.
Oh, okay, yes.
He's the king for me, I think, right now as a director. That's just like anything that he has his paws in, I'm fucking his monkey paws in, I'm there for it.
We're really living in a great time of young directors.
I mean, and it's because a lot of them can come up through horror and do something fucking crazy because that's what we want, us horror freaks.
Well, and the 3 that I mentioned are great because they're not horror people, but they are doing their thing in the non-horror genre. So like,
yeah, good for them. Somebody's got to.
It's great that there's not one avenue. You and I both love horror, but it's good to have it across the board.
My sister got me a horror movie watching blanket that has all the like top killers on it, and I'm super pumped about it. I'm like, she gets me.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I love my horror, but yeah, I would say like out of all of them though, Rian Johnson has his shit together in a way that's just incredible that he is able to keep surprising us after all these movies.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with 2 murder mysteries in a row, which is really hard to do.
Well, and especially Rian Johnson has the most interesting resume of the 3. Like he's not limited to. He's not kind of like put into a genre per se.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants.
Like he did a time travel movie. He did a Star Wars movie, and then he's done 2 murder mysteries. And I cannot wait for the murder mystery show that he's doing with Natasha Lyonne.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Oh yeah,
cool.
that's why she has a cameo in
Oh.
Glass Onion.
I mean, who doesn't though? We should also talk about that, but we'll get to Glass Onion. I will say, just maybe as our last thing to connect between Knives Out and Glass Onion in both of these movies. I don't know if you know who No Segan is, but he plays Trooper Wagner in Knives Out. And then he
Okay.
plays like the Derol guy who's like staying at the fucking compound on the island with
He's
Edward Norton. It's the same actor.
Derol.
Yeah. And he's friends with Rian Johnson in real life, and he's like been in a bunch of his movies as just like little fun cameos. I love him as Trooper Wagner. Honestly, I really did. I think he's hilarious in Knives Out. Just the few scenes he's in, he always
Yeah.
makes me laugh. But I'm obsessed with him now in Glass Onion because Derol, I'm like, that's the guy I want to be partying with. He's like, fucking A. Like, he's just so funny. But my whole thing is that I like to think now, I don't know, that Trooper Wagner, like the pandemic hit him really hard. And that like because I don't think we ever learned his first name in Knives Out. He's just Trooper Wagner.
Trooper Wagner.
So it could be fucking Derol. And then like this is what his happened to him in the pandemic. Like hit him hard. Like either something really good or something really bad happened to him. That's all I know. For him to have made this big of a change. Maybe he's just like living his best life because that's what it kind of sounds like. But maybe he's also at rock bottom. I don't know, but I love it. I like to think they're the same character.
Oh my god, I would love it if in the third Knives Out we learn that it is the same guy.
And he's the murderer.
We see the story of how he got from A to B.
I was watching him the whole movie. Every time he popped up, I was like, is he the killer? Is it him? And that's why I think because they make a joke about it too in Knives Out when he's like, there was one person who acted with malicious intent. And then it's like, Trooper Wagner. And she's like, Trooper Wagner? And he's like, no. No. But it's like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if it was Trooper Wagner eventually? I'm just pitching my ideas for Knives Out 3 to Rian Johnson right now. Hit me up.
Now knowing that is the same guy,
Yeah.
that reminds me so much of Scott Derrickson in Sinister and the Black Phone. He's got that guy who plays Officer Nobody or
James Ransone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Deputy so-and-so.
That's right. All right, I gotta shout out one little thing before we move on to Glass Onion. Chris Evans' sweater in Knives Out looks like it's made of clouds.
It's amazing.
It is the fluffiest, most comfortable looking thing I've ever seen.
Really good sweater.
And I love it. It's a character within itself.
Just like how I also love how Anna de Armas's character throws up when she lies. Such a funny little quirk, and I just love it.
It's a good little bit that on the surface seems like it would be totally stupid, but it works. It's great.
He's great at that. Little hilarious gags that actually have to do with the plot. It's just great.
But yeah, so I think a good full transition to like Knives Out, or sorry, Glass Onion. This is the first role I've ever loved Daniel Craig in.
Really?
Daniel Craig, I've liked him. I've never hated him before. Like people love him as James Bond, and sorry,
he's good as James Bond.
I'm a Pierce Brosnan man. It's a flaw of mine, and I own it. But this is the first role I'm like, I fucking love.
I'm all in on Daniel Craig now.
Benoit Blanc.
Benoit Blanc is the best.
I will admit I have not seen Logan Lucky. I've heard he's amazing in that as well.
I haven't seen that either, but I always associate him before he played Benoit Blanc, because now this is what I associate with him. And I hadn't really watched all the James Bond movies. I think I had seen Casino Royale, and then I just rewatched them, and they're fine, whatever. But I think he's actually like really, really good in A Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, a David Fincher movie, and I love him in that movie, and I love him and Rooney Mara in that movie. I just think he's great. I've always thought he's a really talented actor, and he was just like, he needed the right role.
Yes.
And James Bond was great, but it's like you can only do so much, I feel. And this was like him just hamming it up. Glass Onion especially. He's really hamming it up, and he's just having the most fun. And he is like, I love him. I would watch 100 more movies with Benoit Blanc.
Yeah, like having fun is the perfect thing. Like Sarah said that he looks like he's having a blast playing this role, and I'm like, that's why I love him so much in these movies. Like it reminds me of like John Cena in Peacemaker. Like
Yeah.
he is just having the best time of his
Mhm.
life.
And it's actually still a good movie. So that's like that's exactly what you want. I want
Yeah.
the actors having fucking a great time because when Benoit is enjoying himself, I know I am. Personally, everything about him, I love his whole like the southern charm and like his little
Yeah.
accent. I think his accent's amazing. It's just so good and I loved him in Knives Out. I didn't think I could love him anymore, but I do. I love him even more in Glass Onion.
My God, that just felt so good, so solid, so satisfying. Like one of those mini crosswords the Times has, or I have a chef friend, and she speaks of trying to create the perfect bite. And that just felt like the most satisfying, bite-sized.
It really is amazing because like his character is borderline cartoonish. Like his character is so
Mhm.
different than anything else in the movie. Like they kind of position him as like this, person in the wrong time period kind of thing. And even Chris Evans is like, foghorn leghorn
Yeah,
looking
that foghorn
motherfucker.
the
Like,
foghorn leghorn drawl.
yeah,
It's like it's so dramatic, but it just works perfectly because what's great about Benoit Blanc, and I think just one of the reasons that these movies are so good is that like on the surface he seems very like silly and like
hmm
also in both Knives Out and Glass Onion for the first half of the movie you're like wow he's a terrible detective even though he does a lot of things that seem like he's a great detective you're also like come on how did he not figure this out and then you realize like in both of these movies you're like of course he was playing us he was on top of it because he's great at putting on that southern charm and seem like really throwing everybody off and it works as the audience member because I know how smart he is because I saw Knives Out. But again, he surprised me in this
yeah.
because he's also just a joy to watch and you just kind of get sucked up into it, you know?
Well, and it's such a great role for Daniel Craig because prior to this, he has always played such serious
Mhm.
characters. And yeah, like he just looks like he's having a blast. Like he
He's
has
so
that. He
fun.
has that. This movie made me. It's like, oh, he's a great actor,
Mhm.
and he just has always been James Bond. Like this movie's like, oh, he has so much range that he can work with, and it was a lot of fun. The Glass Onion was really great because it showed a side of Blanc in just like a brief period of like where he's not the world's greatest detective. Like it showed the whole lockdown situation. He's sitting in the
Yeah.
bathtub and it has like him playing Among Us with all like this whole cameo of like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and
Steven
Natasha
Sondheim.
Leone. Yeah, like all
Yeah,
those
it's
people.
crazy. That's like I'm pretty sure Angela Lansbury and Stephen Sondheim, they both passed away. So
hmm
this is their last film appearance is playing Among Us with Daniel Craig in Glass Onion, and I have to say I think it's wonderful.
As
It's so good.
themselves.
Yeah, it's wonderful, but it's so good, and I love the fact that like him not being good at Among Us is not just a funny joke. It's like integral to the plot later on. And that's what's so funny is that like these little tiny things that might seem like little jokes, they're hilarious, but then they also wrap around into the plot in both movies. It's crazy. I don't know how he does it.
Totally. And the fact that yeah, like in Knives Out, he is almost like this mythological character. Like I love the opening bit of the other detective asking questions and then him just hitting the piano key and
Yep.
it's like building up this who is this
Because he's
guy?
asking like the same question every time he hits the piano. He's like, when did you guys all arrive? Around the same time? And it's like,
Yeah.
and then like finally, yeah, the family members are just like, who is this guy? Like, who the fuck is that? And yeah, he is like not the focal point. It's more Anna de Armas's character that you start with and that you're with throughout the movie versus Glass Onion, you start with Blanc and it feels like more of a Blanc movie at first.
And it's a brilliant move by Rian Johnson in Knives Out that like Benoit Blanc is such a big character. The moment you introduce him, you can't pull him back. So
Mhm.
like they kind of built out his intro, and then the moment he's like, I'm gonna step in for a second and then I'll recede. He
Mhm.
never recedes.
He
It's,
never recedes,
it's
yeah.
always going. And yeah, in Glass Onion, it's just full bore. And
Like, he has great lines in Knives Out that I love, and the way that he delivers them when he's like, I know we already talked about the Nazi child masturbating in the bathroom, but I also love when he says, like, "I just don't understand. Compels me, though." And, like, the way that he says that, and just his accent in this movie is just used to perfection. It's like Rian Johnson knew how much we loved hearing him say things, and
yeah,
he just really put him, like, the perfect phrases, like when he's like, that clashes with your breezy island style. It's just like, I love this. I can't do a good impression, but his accent is just perfect. Every time he speaks, I smile.
it's like, can we get just a Benoit Blanc narration of any audiobook? Like,
Anything. I would love it. Oh my god, get a fucking novelized version of these movies and then have him read it, whatever it is. But I do love that he is like more of a character in this movie. That's probably why I'm like, okay, wow, I love him even more, cuz I mean, he's the only character we know from the original, but also it's more of a, I guess I was not exactly sure of the plot of this movie going into it. I knew the other one starts with a murder. So I thought I was like going into this one going, okay, so who, like, obviously Edward Norton's going to die. That's kind of
mhm,
like what I was thinking just from the trailers. And he's also throwing a fucking murder mystery party, right?
yeah.
So I feel like it really did a good job of like, that's what you assume. And then it really goes in a bunch of different directions. I didn't think he could do it again, but he topped it. It's insane.
Speaking of different directions, I'm sorry, but I just have this thought in my head of Benoit Blanc narrating Lord of the Rings. It's like, then Frodo cast the ring into the fires of Mount Mordor.
I would fucking
I,
love it.
I
Give
would
that
listen to
guy
it all day.
I would listen to him just, like, read anything, like, the shittiest book, I would listen to him read. He's fucking amazing.
But yeah, so Benoit is like, he is the focal point of this movie, which it's great. Rian Johnson was really aware of like what was going on, and like people loved him from this first movie. It almost seemed like he did this first movie as like a flyer, like, Daniel Craig, we're gonna have you play this outrageous character, and it's either gonna be great or it's gonna be okay. Like, it's not gonna suck. Like, it's
Yeah,
gonna be great or it's gonna be okay. It was great.
it was
And
perfect.
so it's like, you're gonna just be all over this movie. You're never not in it. And yeah, like, this movie does amazing job of making you understand like what the actual mystery is. The first movie does it really good too. Like, the first mystery is like, who killed Christopher Plummer.
Yeah, Harlan Thrombey, which I feel like that movie is weird because it makes you think that the mystery is already solved 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes into it because you see Anna de Armas's side, and like he says, the donut hole inside of another
Yeah,
donut hole. And it's like literally because this, like, it seems at first glance to fill in the blanks, but then later you get a big twist, and I was like, that was incredible because I was like, this is a weird murder mystery because I know what happened already.
yeah,
But you have to know, like, now going into Glass Onion, you're like, okay, so I know that. And he still pulled the rug out from under me. I don't
totally.
know how he does it.
Well, yeah, and the main mystery of Knives Out is who hired him to
Mm-hmm.
to look at this,
The anonymous invitation.
and then they kind of play the same thing in Glass Onion,
Mm-hmm. At
but
first, yeah.
then they pull it out. And I mean, this movie is great for so many reasons. It's so much fun. Like, I mean, on the topic of, pulling out the rug, they play the whole thing of like, who hired the best detective in the world to check this out. I love that they didn't do that again. They
Mm-hmm.
let you think it was, and then halfway through they do the Gone Girl flashback
Yep.
plot
Second half of
twist.
the movie from another character's perspective, which was totally like, oh shit. Cause I will say, like, I didn't know anything about the plot of this movie before watching it on Netflix because I wasn't able to see it in theaters. But all I had heard from people was how amazing Janelle Monae was in this movie
So good.
and how incredible like her performance was. But the first half of the movie, I was like, she's just playing a cold bitch. Like I haven't seen shit. I was like, is this really like I was very confused, honestly,
Yeah.
because I was like, she's good, but she's not doing much. Like she got angry in those two scenes, but like I wasn't sure what I was feeling about her. And then there's the whole twist, right?
Mhm.
Which she's a twin and her sister was already dead before the movie. So the movie already started with a murder. We just didn't know. So
Yeah.
it's just a great twist. I love the twin sister thing because that's like something from a murder mystery. It's just very, very fits with the theme. But also the fact that like I just had no idea what to expect. And now it's like I have to watch this movie 100 times in order to find everything because watching it again, you're like, wow, look at all those little things that I didn't notice before. Cause you're like, oh shit, that's not really her. It's just incredible.
It it really is, and yeah, like the thing that both of these movies do, and like these movies are very similar. Like it's very obvious that these were made by the same person. These movies do a similar thing in that they keep tricking you on what the actual mystery is. Like the whole movie, like, oh,
Mhm.
it's who killed this person. Oh no, it's not who killed this person. Who did this thing or who killed like they keep hooking you in. And it's really interesting because like a lot of the time, like a lot of movies, it kind of builds to like it's building to what's the reveal at the end the entire movie. This, it's like, here's the reveal. It's not really the reveal, but like here's a slight reveal, but we're gonna totally change what we're actually trying to do here.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, and then it's like, of course, I knew Blanc wouldn't be that silly and, like, not notice and, like, be so swept up in this little fake mystery, like, murder thing. He's like, of course, he's already been investigating everyone. He just solved the like, fucking murder mystery party thing because that was incidental. He was already investigating everyone and, like, looking into shit? So, of course, he was like I love that he just solves that in 30 seconds, so that's not even a plot. I thought that was gonna be the whole movie.
The dinner scene is maybe my favorite scene in the entire movie because just like it's Benoit Blanc just solving the entire movie
Yeah.
halfway through. But
Mhm.
then my other favorite part is I'm so glad they cast Edward Norton to be the
Yes.
the, the rich guy because
He's so good in this
his
movie.
his acting, his reactions to this guy solving this entire mystery was just like the best. It's like his non-vocal, just him, just he. It was so clear that he was just so mad at
Yeah.
this thing.
What the hell? That was not the simplest thing to set up. So it's fine. It doesn't matter. I hired Gillian Flynn to write the whole thing.
Oh, she's quite good.
She's goddamn expensive, is what she is. What am I supposed to do now? Play Yahtzee all weekend?
And Edward Norton is so good in this movie, and obviously he's like an amalgamation of like every tech billionaire that we've ever
Yeah.
seen, like Elon Musk and fucking Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, all of them, Steve Jobs even. There's a scene where he's literally dressed identical to him. But you know who he reminds me of the most? And I think I'm gonna blow your fucking mind when I tell you this, okay?
Hit me.
Justin Timberlake in The Social Network when he plays
Oh
the guy who's
yeah.
fucking the founder of Napster. He's like, what's cool? $1 billion. And I swear to God, Edward Norton watched that movie on repeat because the shit that he says in that movie is so similar where it sounds like it could be smart, but he also is like a total dick. And you're just like seeing through a lot of his shit. And you're like, that's not that, like, you know what I mean? It's just there's something off about it, but it's the same performance almost.
Private behavior is a relic of a time gone by, and if somehow, someway you've managed to live your life like the Dalai Lama, they'll make shit up because they don't want you. They want your idea, and they want you to say thank you while you, excuse me, wipe your chin and walk away.
That is 100% accurate. Because
Yeah.
like a lot of the billionaire people, like they're all socially awkward and weird
They
and
play up that angle a lot more versus like the like party social guy, whatever, who's like the swindler, right?
yeah.
Part of the business where he's not necessarily the smartest one, but he's able to swindle everyone to thinking he's the smart one.
That's a great spot. I did not think of it, but you're 100% right.
It was just that especially that scene when he takes him out to lunch and says, like, "You know what's cool? $1 billion." And I was just like, God, that's fucking him. He's playing Justin Timberlake. It's like that whole point with the infraction point and like that whole speech about disruptors and all that. I thought he was definitely like unbelievable. I love the cast in this movie, just like I love the one in the last one, but I think I like the Knives Out cast a little bit better. I do think everyone's really good in this movie, but I just don't think they're all used to their full potential like Knives Out. I just think you get really great shit with everybody. I will say Kate Hudson though is unbelievable in this movie.
I was gonna say, if Knives Out is all about Benoit Blanc and Ransom, Daniel
Mhm.
Craig and Chris Evans, if they
And
are
Anna
like,
de Armas.
I think Anna de Armas is good. I
Yeah.
to me personally, I don't think she stands out as like incredible.
Oh, okay.
To me, when I watch Knives Out, it's Daniel Craig and Chris Evans. In this, I think Daniel Craig and Kate Hudson and Edward Norton. Kate Hudson is incredible in this movie.
She's so funny. She's so funny.
Her character is so over the top, but like it's
So good.
but it's so great. Like it's not a problem in my head.
Then there was the whole thing with the Halloween costume. It was a tribute to Beyonce, but people did not take it that way.
The whole thing, and it also comes out with something really poignant out of it, which I love, but like her whole thing of like when they're like, please don't tell me that you thought that sweatshops are where they made sweatpants. And it's like, oh my God, you're so dumb. But then it's like that whole thing that, fucking Edward Norton's all like, she just speaks what everyone's thinking. She just says whatever she wants and people can't handle it. And then like you get the best line ever when Benoit Blanc is like,
It's a dangerous thing to mistake speaking without thought for speaking the truth.
that was really incredible. Like out of that hilarious joke, again, something really poignant came out of it.
I almost got that tattooed on my neck, and then I was like, but I should think about this.
Yeah, because is that too much? Maybe it is. That was what he was saying, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's so good. It's such a good like point, and that's what's so great about this whole movie is that he's really doing a whole thing about how rich people are just shitheads, basically. Both of these movies.
They like to call themselves the disruptors. But I knew who they were, and I told her who they were. Shitheads.
So this movie made me think about, okay, we have Knives Out. So part 1 is family wealth. Part 2 is, I don't know what the right like term is, but it's
Golden titties.
golden titty wealth. Non-family wealth. I'm like, what is part 3? I was like, is Rian Johnson like can he do this kind of story with like a middle class kind of grouping? I don't know. But I really enjoyed watching Knives Out and Glass Onion together because their stories are so different, but there's a lot of like common threads, like through lines with this. So like I wrote down like, so if we look at like who the main characters are from like a wealth standpoint, we have Miles, who's Edward Norton in Glass Onions, and then we have Harlan, who's Christopher Plummer in Knives
Amazing.
Out. He's so good. And so the big difference is that Christopher Plummer, he is sharing his wealth out of a sense of like family obligation. But eventually he realizes that the harm he's done to his family because of this. But he's doing it with the best intention. And then in Knives Out, he tries to resolve his error
By cutting everyone out of the will.
Everyone coming out. And then really the timing of his death is the most unfortunate part. Like it's a harsh reaction, but like his death really just makes it a whole lot worse. Whereas Glass Onion is kind of the opposite. Like Miles is essentially he's a magician looking nobody. Like in the flashback, like with the hair and the ponytail.
He's Tom Cruise in Magnolia. That's what he is. It's literally the exact same fucking outfit. It's hilarious. It's horrible. I hate seeing him with that outfit. It's almost as bad as Dave Bautista with hair.
Oh yeah, Dave Bautista with hair is
really
weird.
unfortunate.
Is weird, especially as someone who grew up watching wrestling and he's never had hair.
No, it was upsetting.
But yeah, so Miles, like, he gets wealthy with Andy starting Alpha, which, side note, I paused the movie. Alpha is a total like crypto blockchain kind of company.
I have no idea. I did not read the napkin, but I thought, like, did these companies really start on a napkin? I mean, it was a pretty convenient thing to like, she writes out the wireframe of the entire like app or whatever it
Yeah.
is. I don't know. That all went over my head, but I
That
figured
remi-
it was like a tech company, like one of these fuckers
it reminded
that
me
they're
of,
imitating.
yeah, like it reminded me of like there's not like a literal scene in like The Social Network, but like people like not taking notes and then they grab a piece of paper and they just jot down whatever,
Yeah,
like.
exactly.
But yeah, like he starts this business with Andy and they make a lot of money and then Miles funds all of these people's endeavors.
He did that beforehand.
But well, before he had money, he like the small
He, like,
time
hooked him up
thing.
with the little things,
Yeah.
yeah, so they, like, eventually went on to their side, because this is my real question, is, like, would any of these people hang out in real life? And the real answer is no, because there's no way that Kate Hudson, as, like, a former model, I don't care if she's, like, dressed as Beyoncé and now nobody talks to her, but, like, she still would not be hanging out with these fucks at this bar, and maybe she's a dumbass, but I also just thought, I guess it only makes sense because Andy's the one that brought them all
Yeah.
together, and she's the one that I get, that I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, everyone would be attracted to her, like, at first, right? Like, as a friend.
Yeah, like they were washed
She's the
like
catalyst.
they say that they were washed up in their 30s and then
Mhm.
Andy brought them together and then Miles came and was able to do the small things to get them going again. Then they start this company and then Miles just started funding,
'Cause they bring everybody along, yeah.
yeah, everything cuz Andy died literally a week before all this stuff. So like all the stuff that they are corrupted by the entire movie has already happened. So it happened while they were still together and when they started the company. But like whereas Christopher Plummer is trying to remedy or resolve the mistakes that he made, Miles is doing the opposite. Miles is he's furthering his grip on people and controlling them.
Mhm.
And that was the interesting kind of like parallel in my mind of like who these main characters are as like the wealth protagonist.
And I just assumed that Edward Norton would also be the one to die because he was being set up that way. And with everything he was doing, it seemed like a very similar, like the opposite, obviously, but similar through line with Christopher Plummer. So the fact that I was just waiting for him to die for like a long time. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know when it was going to happen. And then when it didn't happen, I was very shocked that it was Dave Bautista that died. I was
Yeah.
really shocked by that.
I was too.
I didn't notice him switch the glasses.
I was wondering if Edward Norton was going to die. I mean, the whole time I'm like Edward Norton of all these people outside of Kate Hudson is the biggest name. I'm like, are they going to kill him off? And it's a great example of Rian Johnson kind of playing with expectations of like in the first movie, the murder happens and then it's a matter of who did it.
It's more of a whodunit traditional.
The first half of this movie is oh, we are playing with a who did it, but then halfway through the movie it switches to who the real murder victim is and who did it. Like you say, oh, it's Dave Bautista. Nope, it's not. It's actually Cassandra Blanc or
Brand.
Yeah.
Andy. And that's the cool part is that, like, yeah, and his death is really like he did a good job with that scene because I was like, this is really like intense. That whole scene was very stressful because he also, like Edward Norton's character Miles, has the fucking Mona Lisa in his living room, and the like glass on that is so sensitive, and like Dave Bautista's phone keeps going off,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever people like yell or like make a loud noise, it like shuts. So there's like those shots of it, and you just keep hearing it, like the glass like slamming shut, and it's just like really stressful. And I was like, somebody's going to die. Like I don't know what's happening, but I know that someone's going to die. Like that's all I knew. And I thought that Miles was going to do it right when they were like drinking drinks or whatever. And then also, he's also like pointing at Birdie and she's like, look at me, look at my dress, which also was really pretty. But I was just as distracted as the rest of them. So it came at me at a huge surprise and I loved it.
This movie is incredible in how much it time jumps without confusing, at least confusing me. It jumps around so much more than Knives Out. Like halfway through, you essentially go back to the beginning.
But you only know because of the bath. You're not in the bath again, are you? And then you get the wonderful Hugh Grant cameo.
Hugh Grant.
I love him, and I'm obsessed with the idea of him and Daniel Craig being together.
So I was going to ask you, did you piece that together that they were partners?
Yes.
The first time I watched it, it totally went over my head. I don't know what it was, but I was reading the situation as,
you think Benoit Blanc, the most successful detective in the world, has a roommate?
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, because they were kind of positioning Benoit Blanc as like,
you really are a straight man.
He hasn't had a job. Well, not even that, but it's like,
oh, you sweet summer child.
He hasn't had a job in a while. He said that to the Among Us group.
Yeah.
And he's just been like sitting in misery in lockdown. And I think I just read that as like, oh, he's like not as successful as he was in Knives Out. And
no, he's just bored.
Then what I want, then like I was talking with Sarah about it, and she's like, oh no, they're like together. And I'm like, oh, didn't even notice that. And then I saw that Rian Johnson like confirmed that. I'm like, nice. Okay, cool. Totally went over my head, but yeah, like sweet.
People that were shocked that like they would confirm that he's gay in this movie. I'm like, did we all forget about when he's like singing show tunes in the car and fucking Knives Out?
Yeah.
And then if you really have any final concerns of is he really gay, just watch the scene where Ethan Hawke sprays that shit down their throats and everybody fucking gags except for him. And we're like, that man could take a dick. Respect. So good. Everybody else just freaks out. And also, Ethan Hawke, what the fuck? Love it.
What a random cameo. This movie is filled with cameos.
But he was filming Moon Knight nearby because they filmed this over in Greece. So he just stopped by for the day and just shot that scene. And I love that he answers no questions because, like, fucking Benoit Blanc is like,
what is that?
Open, please. You won't be needing that anymore.
I won't?
You're good.
What is that? Is that some kind of disinfectant? Oh.
You're good. Have a great trip, everyone.
I love it. But like, what is that shit? Knowing at the end that you know that Miles is really not that smart and he's a total dumbass. Like, was that shit really? Are they okay? Or do they all have COVID probably now?
I also loved Kate Hudson's character. Like, they all have the mask and Kate Hudson just has like this.
The mesh
mask.
You know that was like literally styled after Lana Del Rey did a mask like that in fucking like during COVID, and they did the same one.
Sounds about right.
I know. I'm just like, but and then that's what's great is that like even just from the beginning scene on the dock when everyone shows up, you know who these characters are based on their masks. Like obviously Lionel, like the scientist guy, is like really tight mask, really like covered, right? And then Kathryn Hahn shows up and her nose is out. She's like all like, you know, crazy, like stressed out, just running around. And then like, of course, Kate Hudson has like the fake mask that's not even a real mask. And then Dave Bautista and his girlfriend Whiskey, when they show up and they have no mask, it's just perfect.
Sets the framework for people that hate this guy to get away and have a vacation. Also, the box in the opening scene,
so cool.
Well, it gave me real Hellraiser vibes.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, without the torture porn aspect of it, but
I mean, I just felt like a real moron when like later when Benoit Blanc's like, oh, with the children's puzzle games in it. And I was just like, what? Children's puzzles? I would have never figured out how to open one thing in that box. I'm totally like the birdie that's like, tic-tac-toe, it's tic-tac-toe, that's it. Or like, oh, music, I know this. She was so good. Or like, Alexa, Shazam this song.
Alexa, Shazam this song, please. Alexa, Shazam the song, please. This can't Shazam, it's a lamp. I love you, Birdie. I love you too, Claire.
This is a lamp.
Birdie was like the real MVP of the movie. I just love her so much. But I did also notice a lot of people mentioned online too. So like I guess you know how Apple has this weird thing where like in movies villains can't use an iPhone, like they can't own an Apple phone.
I
Like
didn't know
Apple
that.
won't allow a villain to use an Apple product. So
Oh.
like people were like in the last movie, besides Anna de Armas, Chris Evans had an Android and everyone else had iPhones. So everyone was like, "Oh, he's the killer." I guess.
Oh,
I didn't know
interesting.
that. So in this movie, like everybody has a non-Apple phone. I feel like, and so I was like, that's pretty funny because I think that's such a stupid fucking rule. That like, why is that a thing? Whatever. But anyways, I just thought that was a funny moment that I did not realize when I watched it, but now rewatching it, I'm like, oh, that's good. Way to go, Rian Johnson.
I mean, I'll talk about a real offensive injustice. These professional wrestlers, they are ruining our middle age. Sorry, the male middle age. Okay. Dave Bautista is 53 years old and looks like that. John Cena's 45. The Rock is 50. Okay. As someone who's in my 30s, I don't stand a chance.
I mean,
Like, if Sarah was ever to look at me and be like, "Oh man, Dave Bautista in Glass Onion," be like, "We're done. Like, it's unattainable. I got nothing." And it's upsetting to me. I don't know what to do with it. There's nothing I can do.
I mean, hey, Jennifer Aniston is well into her 50s, and I have to look at that too and be like, really, this is where I'm at. And that's what I can't ever attain that, even now. There's no way. And Dave Bautista, the one like indicator that he's old is that you can kind of see he has gray chest hair, but that's it. Other than that, I mean, like, I have friends that like I would totally see wearing the outfits that he wears in this movie, but he fucking pulls it off. He looks so hot.
With the gun.
Yeah, no, the gun is hilarious. The fact that he wears this gun, and it's perfect because he dies of a pineapple allergy. And my first question was like, where the fuck is his EpiPen? But I'm like, of course, this fucking moron wouldn't wear a mask because of COVID, wouldn't fucking care about an EpiPen, but he has a gun on him at all times in
Yeah.
case shit goes down. But it's like the actual shit that goes down, he's not prepared for. I loved it. It was perfect.
It's great.
Every little thing comes back around, man. It's wonderful.
It really is. And another parallel to Knives Out was like, in Knives Out, we see the evolution of people's corruption when like money is taken from them. So like we see like Walt trying to intimidate Marta, all that stuff. Like we see what happens when money's taken from them. In Glass Onion, we kind of see a different view of like all these people are already corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see the fear of them losing everything, and how they act.
And even more so that like Benoit Blanc is a huge part of like why I love these movies, because he really supports and propels the female character that's like the hero of the story to be the ultimate hero by the end, and maybe not typically by like your regular standards like this movie, because once he burns the napkin, which like of course he fucking does, right? You're like, fuck, what is he gonna do? And you're like, Benoit Blanc, like he says, he's not Batman, he can't do everything. But what can he do is he can like literally like support her to go, here's that shit. Give them a reminder of like this explosive fucking shit that your sister was like, no, I'm out. And she blows up the whole house. It's amazing. It's so good. And I love his support of both of these characters and how he's just, I think he has wonderful chemistry with Janelle Monae, especially.
Totally.
Like, I want them to be detective partners in the next few movies. He's like, you're so good at this.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that they did better in Knives Out than they did in Glass Onion is tell the audience that he is not a detective. He's a private investigator. And that's why, like, he's not obligated to turn people in or like bring the law in. Like, he is a third party.
Mm-hmm.
In Knives Out, they did a really good job of like, of putting that there. in Glass Onion, they've never mentioned that. Like
Well,
I
that's
think
because it's a sequel. We already know that. We know that, and he does say, "I'm not Batman." There's a certain point where my jurisdiction ends, and that's why another reason these two movies are great is because in the old murder mystery stories, the detective spiel at the end was that that's the final word. Whatever he says goes. Who cares about evidence? They would mop up blood back in the day
Mhm.
because they didn't care about evidence. So it's like nowadays, like you have all these fuckers that like have money and wealth and shit behind them. Like, how do you get those? You have to kind of go out of the box means, right? Or out of the
Totally.
box ways. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I love that he still saves the day in his own, in almost a Batman way. That he's like, I'm not Batman, and they do kind of say that, but
Well, it's the littlest thing, but like it's the littlest thing that explains his actions at the end. Like if he was a cop, it would take a lot more to like justify him turning away from the law per se.
I mean,
You
yeah,
know,
but that's the thing is
it's
that
the
he's just a
smallest thing.
detective. It
Yeah.
is, but that's what's great is that it used to be the detective had all the power, right? Like whatever he says goes, right? But
Hmm.
now it's like, well, technically, Edward Norton's character still has all the power. He has all the money, the lawyers, and all that shit. They make a big point of that in both movies
Hmm.
that the money, they have all these resources on their side. But I like that with Knives Out, it's a big point of like, you beat them not by playing the game their way, but by being a good person and
Hmm.
playing your own way. And that's what I love about it is that like same with this movie, like yes, she like technically destroyed his house at the end, but like she really just I'm sure that that was the inevitable end of him and just made it even perfect with the destruction of the Mona Lisa. So I think she did him a favor cuz whatever mission they had going with that shit was going to explode. For sure. So I mean, he was basically going to come to an end pretty quickly.
Your feel of the future just barbecued. The world's most famous painting, you dumbass.
I was really worried at that final scene when she started breaking things. I was like, "Oh no, this is where the ending goes off the rails and it
I
gets
was into it. I was like, I want to destroy an entire house of rich people shit too. That looks like so much fun.
it lined up perfectly with Edward Norton's like whole disruptor speech.
Because everyone joins in.
She broke the glass and then she started breaking bigger and bigger things.
And everybody joins in at first, and then she goes crazy.
Then she starts lighting shit on fire, and people are like,
I
whoa,
love
whoa."
Kathryn Hahn, her line when she's like coming in real hot. She
Yeah.
like comes in with one of those things. She's like waving it and just
Yeah.
running. She's so good in that whole part. It's just that whole ending sequence is perfect. And then the destruction of the Mona Lisa at the like when she goes for like the fucking little
Mhm.
of course he installed the fucking thing that would override it.
Yeah, but like the way they ended it, like explaining, is like your thing that was going to be the next thing destroyed the most famous painting in the world. I was like, oh, nice. Okay,
So
that
good.
okay. I was real worried this was just going to be a destruction ending and then it stops, but like it didn't. Like there was
I
a
was worried about that too because I was like, it can't. I mean, it's almost like Knives Out where you think that like he wins at the end because he's like, well, I guess you thought I killed Fran. Well, I guess I didn't because she's alive. Blah blah. And then she pukes on him and says, no, I'm lying. She was dead. So you just confessed. So it's like I was expecting like a twist where the good
Mhm.
guys come out on top because I was like, there's no way that this guy's gonna win because it was like fuck, that sounds like a real life ending, which, like, I get it,
Mhm.
but, like, also, I need an escapist ending
Yeah.
because I like, if it's, like, the same thing I've mentioned before with Jordan Peele and Get Out. Like, if he had ended that with him getting arrested by the police, as realistic as that would have been such a fucking bummer, right?
Yeah.
It would have been really depressing. And this movie was so much fun that I was like, there has to be something. And then I love that it's like, it's just so perfect because it's also, he's going to be forever remembered in the same breath as the Mona
Mhm.
Lisa for destroying it. It's just, it's perfection. And they're totally different cases and totally different movies, but I believe he worked on, Rian Johnson, I think, worked on Knives Out for like 10 years,
Oh
like
wow.
some really long time. Could have been less than that, but I know he worked on it for a long time, so I was really like, "Is he gonna be able to pull it off doing Knives Out 2 and 3 so quick after, like, spending so much time on the first one?" And I was just over the moon at the fact that not only did I just feel like this one's just as good as the first one.
A year in lockdown is at least 5 years in normal life.
I mean, yeah, I guess you're right. I feel like that really did help a lot of people, like with like rewriting and doing things and spending more time on shit.
And I mean, to kind of wrap up the the parallels between this and Knives Out, like the ultimate point of Knives Out was like it was a story about doing the right thing versus doing the selfish thing, regardless of whatever the stakes are. You know, everyone had all these stakes of like their marriage or inheritance or their family, and like Marta was the one who chose to do the right thing every time, even at her own cost.
Mm-hmm.
Glass Onion, the point of it is that some people use money to control other people, and we give the heads of some of these giant companies way too much credit. Like, these companies are
Mm-hmm.
driven by thousands of people, and maybe the celebrity CEOs are just taking more credit for someone else's idea, which is Edward Norton. His whole thing is he steals
Yeah.
this entire credit from Andy.
He social networked her ass just like fucking Mark Zuckerberg. I'm just saying this shit happens. These guys are really like this.
And maybe we idolize them a little too much, kind of like the Mona Lisa. And look how that turned out for both of them.
I will say I love the comparison of like when you're seeing them, they're talking about the Mona Lisa and how you never know what she's really thinking, and her smile changes in her face, and something that seems so simple is actually so complex. And they keep flashing back between the painting, and then Janelle Monae. And it's like, because she's the Mona Lisa. She's the one that seems simple at first and then is super complex upon like when we find out that she's actually the twin sister. And the whole fact that like when she starts the fight at the party and Dave Bautista is like, you're the loser, blah blah blah, she gives a fucking Mona Lisa smile where it like is kind of coming up, and it's just so good. I do want to say one last thing, that the final act of this movie just is great, because earlier in the movie when you find out that Janelle Monae is her twin sister who's playing her real sister who died, and she's like putting together like the list of all the suspects and the motive and the opportunity and all this stuff, and she's like, this is like Clue.
Our suspects, motive, opportunity. Hey, this kind of looks like that Clue notepad.
Yes.
Oh, you must be really great at Clue, huh?
I'm very bad at dumb things.
The entire final act of the movie is like the plot of Clue, or it's basically the Clue game and part of the movie, because when he's explaining why it's dumb is he's like, you just run room to room searching for clues and evidence. And what did they do in the final act of this movie? Helen runs from room to room searching everyone's shit, and just until they find the envelope at the end. And I was just like, fuck, that's awesome. It's so cool, because they're talking about, and that's why he couldn't figure this out from the beginning, because it's so dumb. It's so dumb. And that's why the best quote of the movie.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
It's just dumb.
Credit to Rian Johnson, because the first one ended with Blanc knowing everything, like him piecing everything together, and then this one ends with everything that he knows is incidental. Like, none of this was intentional, none of this was complex. It was just one person being dumb, and that was the hard part for him. He said it himself.
Yeah.
He's bad at dumb things, and that's
Yeah.
why he hates Clue. Terrible game.
Terrible game. And that's what's great, is that in both movies too, like the plot of the actual answer to the like who did it is told very early on. In Knives Out, when she realizes that she switched the meds even though she actually didn't, but she realizes that the names on the bottles are different. And he's like, this is actually a really like efficient method of murder. Like, I'm gonna write this down. And he's like, so if somebody switched the meds on purpose, and I'm like, that's like literally exactly what ends up happening. So it's just really funny that like they tell you that, but you just kind of like don't talk about it. And then in Glass Onion, The same thing happens with Benoit talking with Helen / Andy, and she's like, what if Miles just did it? And he's like, Miles Bron is not an idiot. He wouldn't do that. I mean, especially if there's other people who are willing to do it for him. And then it's like, that's literally the ending. So I have to just watch these closer the first time. I get so swept up by everything amazing that's happening that I don't pay attention to the little clues. I try to, but he's so good at misdirecting you that if he's gonna just stick to murder mysteries, I'm gonna fucking love it. But like, I know Rian Johnson could probably do anything, and I'm here for it.